So, hi, welcome to the Incoming International Students webinar hosted by the EWRI WDSA Graduate Student Task Committee. On the next slide, I'm going to quickly introduce us and myself. My name is Meghna Thomas. I'm a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I work with water distribution systems research. So the American Society of Civil Engineers has an Environmental and Water Resources Institute, which in turn oversees several technical committees, one of which is the Water Distribution Systems Analysis Committee. So a bunch of graduate students and postdocs and professors got together last year to form a graduate student task committee. So we mostly comprised of members from the WDSA committee before, but now we've expanded our scope a little bit. So we have graduate students and postdocs from other water resources adjacent disciplines as well. And basically our grad student committee aims to build a space for graduate students to share resources and get to know each other and network and learn new skills. So some of the things that we do is host webinars for both professional development purposes and to explain technical concepts. We try to organize events at conferences, career panels, and social and networking events. And we also try to share resources and job opportunities and graduate student recruitment posts through LinkedIn and through email. So that's kind of a little brief description of who we are. And what we're doing in this webinar is we're trying to share resources with new incoming international students who are joining grad school in the US. And we want to quickly give a disclaimer before we begin. All of the information that we've included in this webinar is to the best of our knowledge. All of the speakers here are graduate students, international graduate students in the US. So we're sharing information that we've gotten from our own universities, international student services organizations, as well as from our own experiences. We've made a substantial effort to try to offer helpful advice. But remember that you should probably verify these recommendations, that these apply to your specific situation before you act on them. And most of this information is generalizable and relevant to all international students, but definitely confirm specific details independently before you make decisions based on this information. So let me give you a quick outline of what we're going to talk about today. First, Ali is going to tell us about what you should know before you move to the US, so that deals with housing, and then as soon as you get here, how to set up a phone plan so you have connectivity. Bunmi is going to talk a little bit about how to get started with your life here in the US. Nazia is going to share some resources for international students, and I'm going to talk a little bit about establishing a relationship with your research advisor. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ali to get us started.
Thank you so much, Meghna. Hello, everyone. My name is Aly Salem. I'm a PhD student at the University of Illinois, Chicago. My research focus is on water distribution system optimization. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, and I hope you find the webinar useful. So yeah, I would be talking about housing, and let's start by a quick introduction. Why it's important to secure housing early, or ideally before you move to the US. I'm not sure where are you going to travel from, but I can assure you that it would be very nice to have a nice rest after a very long trip. And more importantly, housing is important because it acts as a proof of address that is very important for finishing your paperwork and also to be able to receive mails. So some people prefer to see where they're gonna live in person. I understand this, but even if this is the case, it's very important to have some options so that you check them once you arrive. And this will help you reduce the period of time you stay at a hotel or maybe at a friend's home or whatever. So what options do you have? Firstly, based on location, you can get campus housing or off-campus housing, and I will be talking about this in details later. Based on type, you can stay in a private apartment, shared apartment, or even a shared room. Your apartment can be furnished or unfurnished, and your contract duration might vary. It can be monthly, yearly, or even a sublease. We will talk about the pros and cons of each one of these options later. Okay, so how to find a good housing? So how to find a housing in general? So most universities have their own housing portal with all listings, availability, and also rent. So I recommend to check your university housing portal first. In addition to that, there are multiple resources that you can use to search for apartments. I'm giving here some examples, such as Zillow, Apartments, Craigslist. On the right here, I'm showing a screenshot from apartments.com, but I think all of these websites have a similar interface. So they give you the option to choose a location based on a zip code or a city. It also allows you to filter the options based on the cost, the maximum rent you plan to pay, and also you can choose how many apartments you are looking for, how many rooms you are looking for. And the other option you have is the social media. So personally, I used Facebook Marketplace to get housing, and most of the time you university would have dedicated groups or pages for this specific reason. So I recommend to maybe ask your colleagues or look on Facebook for these groups. And the other option you have is to ask for help from a local real estate agent, which personally I don't recommend to do specifically after arrival because you don't have that much experience, so you can be easily scammed. Next slide, please. Yeah, so if this is the first time for you to find a place for you to live in, it might be very challenging to answer the question of how to find the right housing. Specifically, if you are moving to a very big city, such as Chicago, you might end up having like maybe tens of options. So which one to choose? So actually, even after changing homes more than 4 times in the last 4 years, I still feel that this is a very hard question to answer, and there's a lot of luck involved in getting good housing. So in general, there are multiple things you should keep in mind, at least to increase your opportunity to get a good housing. The first thing is financial consideration. You should always keep your budget in mind. So you should remember that you are going to pay rent. In addition to that, there are some utilities such as electricity, gas, and internet connection. So you should plan how much you are going to deduct from your stipend and dedicate this for housing so that you don't feel pressured or you feel that, okay, I could have paid more to get a better housing. So the other option is the location factor. And you have the option to decide if you would like to be very close to campus. In case if your work is like experimental, you need always to go to campus to get your work done, or actually it's not this way, so you can sacrifice the proximity to campus by maybe moving a little bit further. The other thing is the transportation availability. So some cities have a very nice and reliable transportation network, so you can use them. But unfortunately, it's not the case in the whole US. So you might have to drive. So check your city, see if they have reliable transportation, because if they don't, you might have to plan ahead for that. The other thing is neighbor safety. So most of us come from countries that doesn't have a lot of crime in it, not a lot of shooting or whatever. But here in the US, it's very important to keep safety in mind. You can get a full like bedroom apartment with the same price as a shared apartment. So the only factor that is different here is the location or the safety of the neighborhood. So the last factor you should keep in mind is living environment. So as I mentioned earlier, you have the option to live alone in a private room or choose to live with roommates. So this is something that you should decide. This will narrow down your options. The other thing is noise level. If you are a person that like to stay in a very, very quiet places, so most likely you should find or you should search for high level floors, not like the first floor or the basement. And of course, laundry. So here in the US, you can actually get laundry in building. So you don't really need to go somewhere else to clean your clothes, to wash your clothes. But sometimes you don't have this option and you have to carry your clothes to a nearby laundry to do it. So you should always uh, make these type of decisions so that you don't like become surprised when you arrive. So as I promised, these are some like pros and cons for each housing. Some of them are very intuitive. For example, campus housing, they are closer to campus. The good thing is that you don't really need to care about bills. All of them are already included in the rent. You also have the option to get meal plans if you don't like to cook for yourself. You will be able to enjoy campus facilities. On the other hand, most likely you would be paying more and there would be more restricted rules compared to off-campus housing that is cheaper. And also you have multiple options and of course more variety. The cons of having off-campus housing is that you will be responsible of paying for bills. So you should always be careful not to delay this so that you don't really get any fines. So for private apartments, of course, you have privacy, you have your own space, you can control your daily activity, but of course, it's more expensive than getting a shared apartment. But the good thing about the shared apartment, and I personally felt this myself, is social interaction. So if you have a private apartment and you typically go from your lab to your home like 5 days a week, you will feel very isolated. So if you don't have any, I would say, issue with living with some other people, I would suggest to go for this option just to be socially active. But unfortunately, there might be a lot of conflict. So maybe your sleeping schedule does not match your roommates, so you will have to manage this and find a way that works for all of you. So in terms of uh, leasing period. In other words, like the monthly or limited term lease compared to a yearly lease. So monthly lease gives you more flexibility. So you can really move if you didn't like the apartment, go somewhere else. But unfortunately, this also poses some risk because you might have to move because the landlord asked you to do that. So you should expect some frequent moving if you went for the monthly option. And on the other hand, you can go to the yearly lease that is more stable, but it's also a very long commitment. So if you figured out that this is not the suitable apartment for you, you might have to pay an additional cost to break the lease. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's also nice to have or to be prepared for some challenges. It's not like a very easy thing to do. One of these challenges is the social security number, and Bonmi will be talking about this more later, but social security is simply a certain type of ID that is required whenever you are doing any financial commitment. So if you are renting an apartment, buying a new car, or even applying for a driving license, you will be asked to provide your social security number, in short, SSN. So this SSN takes some time to be ready, like a month or two. So this is the first thing you would be asked to provide. And again, I was suggesting to get this before or even once you arrive. So how can you do that? Obviously, this is the main challenge. The good thing is that some, and I would say like a very few landlords accept students with their I-20. So they don't really ask for an SSN. But this is a very rare, and you should always be prepared to overcome this challenge. So the possible ways to do this is to get a sublease. So instead of getting an apartment for yourself, you are actually getting an apartment from someone else. So you are not connected directly to the landlord. Let's say that Meghna has an apartment and she wants to leave to go somewhere. So this sublease means that she's going to give you this apartment, and you will be responsible of paying her the rent. But at the end, she is the one responsible in front of the landlord. So landlord doesn't really have anything to do with you. So the other option is to get a cosigner. And as this implies, you are asking someone else to sign the lease with you. You can ask your family relatives, your friends, or even your advisor to help you with that. And because they have their SSN, they will be the one responsible if anything went bad with the apartment. So the last option, if you couldn't do both of these, is to get campus housing for a short period of time until you get your SSN. Then you can apply for off-campus housing. So one of the the other challenges, there are many challenges. We have only listed like the main ones. And the second challenge that you might face is to be able to connect or contact your landlords or people offering these apartments. So I will give the floor to Oscar to give us his experience and how he dealt with this challenge.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Oscar, as Ali presented me. I am an incoming master student in New Mexico State University, and my background is in climate change projections. Well, as Ali mentioned, there is some challenges related to housing, especially how to contact the landlord and start the leasing contract. Usually, you have two options: to send an email or call. But sometimes emailing the landlord takes a lot of time, so it's preferable to call him or her instead of sending an email. But sometimes depends on the country, obviously, of the mobile and the local mobile company. Um, you can do that, but high premium. They will charge you more for doing international call. If this is a problem of yours, you can use actually Skype, because Skype offers you unlimited calls to the US and also give you the opportunity to, or the option to acquire a US number, but relatively a cheap amount. For example, you can get unlimited calls or minutes for any US number for around two 54 per month, or also you can get a US number for 650 a month. It's a good option in order to get access to and communicate with people in the US, especially landlord, because it's the housing is one of the most important things before coming to the US. And remember, be able to communicate without issue is priceless. Uh, there is no price to put to something so important as housing, especially when we are coming from a foreign country to the US. Well, Ali, let's continue.
Thank you, Oscar. So there have been a lot of information or a lot of information we've given. So the main takeaways are start searching early, give yourself some time, utilize all the available resources to find good options, try to narrow down your choices by thinking of these factors which we mentioned before, budget and commuting options, and also be ready for some challenges. So yeah, the last slide in this section is to get a cellular service. And again, it's very important so that you can contact like everyone easily. The first step to do that is to check your service coverage in your area. So there are multiple providers here in the US. Some of them are expensive, some of them are cheap. But the best thing to do before choosing which one you will be getting is to check their coverage, because maybe T-Mobile is very good in my neighborhood, but it's not as good as AT&T, for example. So yeah, this is your first thing to do. The second thing is to choose a suitable plan. So personally, I came from a country where you pay for your calls and texting. But here in the US, you have unlimited calls and texting. So you shouldn't worry about that. And most likely, the plan will be controlled by the amount of mobile data you have and the number of minutes you can call, you have international calls. So if you would be staying out of home for a long time, if you need to always call your relatives back home, it's a good idea to get an expensive plan that provides this type of flexibility. So to give you some recommendation based on the time or the period I lived here in the US, don't delay this. If you could get it before you arrive, it would be great. If you couldn't, I would say this is the first thing you do once you get here. Just go to like one of these providers shop and get you a SIM card. And the other thing is to prevent long-term commitment. So once you arrive, you will see this all over the place. Like get a free iPhone 15 Ultra Pro Max, whatever. So this is not free. You pay for it. So don't be tricked. Most likely they will ask you to have a very long commitment. So just be aware of that. And the last recommendation is to get a prepaid plan. Then you look for a postpaid plan with some of your friends. Please reach out to me on this email if you have any questions regarding like housing, getting a cellular service, or in general, if you have any other question. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ali, for your presentation. My name is Bumi, and I'm a third-year PhD student at Aly University. And I'll be telling you guys about important information you need to know about immigration and travel plans into the United States. So let's get you started. So the very first document you'd want to consider is your I-20 document. And many will say this is the most important document you can have as a student because you would need it for things like applying for your visa, verification at the port of entry, applying for a social security number, which we'll get to later on, and trying to get internship or job opportunities. Assuming many of you already have your I-20 document at this time, but if you haven't, it would look something like this. Also, as a quick disclaimer, I would also reiterate that although this presentation seems to focus on students with F1 status, the principles we'll talk about applies across board regardless of what student status you have. So at the very top of the I-20 document, you have the service ID, which is the Student and Exchange Visitor Identification System ID. It is simply that ID that connects you to your school and identifies you to the US government as a student of that institution. You'd often need this in applying for your visa. Next, you have a student section where you have your surname, your given name, your date of birth, and your country of birth. It also includes whatever class of admission or student status you're enrolled in. You also have a school information section, which contains relevant information about the school you're admitted into. And then you have your program of study, which indicates what program you'll be studying, and the program start and end date. Keep in mind that this program start and end date also indicates what duration for which your student status, be it F1 or J1, is valid in the United States. And then you have financials, which tells you how much you need to pay for tuition and how much you need to pay for living expenses, and if you'll be given any financial funding, either in form of graduate assistantship or teaching assistantship, or you'll be paying for yourself. I should also mention that it is very important that you make sure that the information on these first 4 sections are as accurate as possible, particularly the student section. You want to make sure it is consistent with what you have on your passport. If you find any discrepancy, make sure you reach out to your international student office and they can make corrections where possible. In the 5th section, you have the school attestation section and student attestation section. Here, your designated school official would have their signature on it, and you also provide your own signature with a date. For a date, I would recommend you, or it is generally recommended that you use the date you receive your I-20 document or any other date before your visa interview. For the 7th section, you have what is known as the employment authorization. You typically need this if you are applying for off-campus jobs or you are trying to seek internship opportunities. And one other important section is the travel endorsement section. Again, your designated school official will sign this whenever you need to travel out of the United States for vacation or conferences or any other purpose. It serves as a proof when you are coming back to the United States that you are still eligible to complete your education in the state. And of course, on the right, you have additional information or instructions that it is highly recommended that you go through before signing your I-20 document. So once you get your I-20, the next thing you should start thinking of is applying for your visa document or your student visa. So the student visa is stamped on your passport, which allows you entry into the United States at any port of entry. In most cases, you would note that the visa validity period, which if you see the visa image here, is indicated by start of the issue date and the expiration date. So some cases you might notice that this duration is different from your program duration, which we saw earlier. Why is this the case? That is exactly where the difference between your student visa and your student status comes in. So you can think of it this way. Your student visa allows you to legally come into the US. But student status allows you to legally reside in the US during your program duration. So while your visa might not cover your entire duration, it gets you into the US. And afterwards, as long as you maintain your status, whenever it is you want to elapse your visa validity period, you can always renew it. For some countries, depending on where you're from, you might get a visa validity period of 1 year. You might get a visa validity period of 5 years, regardless of the duration of your program. This is often the case because of what is known as the visa reciprocity rule. And I've included a link that you could look up what applies for your country, and then you can make plans as to knowing if you need to renew your visa documents or not. So once you fly into the US, what next? You would often receive what is known as an arrival or departure record, also the I-94 document at any port of entry of the United States. And this I-94 document just keeps a record of your entry and your exit to and from the United States at any point in time. If you'll be coming through seaports or airports, you would often receive a stamp that looks like what you have at the top right corner here, or an electronic I-94 card, which is at the bottom here. If you'll be traveling by land, you would likely receive the paper I-94 document as an alternative instead. Again, for this I-94 document, it's important to make sure that what you have on both your electronic card, your stamp, is the same as what you have on your I-20 document. So in the case of what we have here, the stamp on top says a J1 status, while the stamp or the I-94 card on the bottom says an F1 status. So if that is by chance the case, you need to speak with the International Student Office of your school so that they make the right modifications. Also, one last thing about the I-94 document. I believe the United States is trying to completely go digital and eliminate the use of stamps. So if you get to a port of entry and you're not provided a stamp, that is absolutely fine. But if you feel like you just want that stamp, you can also speak to the immigration officer and you granted one. So once you are settled in, one of the things you start thinking about is how to apply for a social security number, which we've mentioned a couple of times. And this is especially the case if you have a graduate assistantship, a teaching assistantship, or a research assistantship. You need this to report whatever wages you gain from your scholarship or your assistantship position, and be able to record things as your credit score or see if you are legitimate for some social security benefits. And to apply for this social security number, you simply need an application confirmation. You need your employment letter, your I-94 document, valid passport and visa stamp, and your I-20 document. Once again, you see the I-20 coming up, which tells you how important it is. Depending on what states you would be studying, they might require that you make appointments before going to apply for the SSN, or in other cases, you simply just have to walk in. So I'll suggest you make confirmation first. As long as you have these documents, you can apply for it, and in a couple of weeks or a month, you would get your social security number. And it will look like this. So once you do that, or even possibly before you even do that, you'd most likely want to provide some financial structure to your stay in the US. And one of the ways you can do that is to open a bank account. You need to be able to control your cash flow. And the two major bank accounts that is typical for students in the United States is the check-ins and savings account. The check-ins is an account you would often use for day-to-day transactions, get money in, get money out. And in the savings account, you are just still saving your money for some future use. In the United States, the major banking institutions you have is Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and PNC. Of course, the list is longer, but these are the top 4 that I know a lot of graduate students have a bank account with. And to open your account with them, you simply need passport document and an I-20, your I-20 document once again. In most cases, you don't need to use your SSN for applying for this. So in fact, you can open a bank account before you even apply for your SSN, or as soon as you are settled in the States. Things you might want to consider when opening a bank account are your monthly maintenance fees. Some bank will charge about $25 to $50, depending on what account you're opening and what bank you choose. They might charge as high as some $50, $100 in order to maintain your bank account. Some bank require that you have a certain amount of money in your bank account at all times, which is your minimum account balance. And in the case where you're opening a savings account, you also need to think of what yearly interest rates do you get on your savings. And if you are young, between the ages of 17 to 25, you also get some benefits, like a waiver on the monthly maintenance fees, as well as cash benefits. I believe there are some banks whereby if you plan to get paid from your teaching assistantship or make a direct deposit to your account, you get some amount of money, maybe $300 or above. Another way to provide some structure to your financials while here in the US is to have a credit card. Almost everyone in the United States have a credit card. And the reason is simply because it is such a great way to start building the US credit score. And that is something you need to start thinking about, especially if you plan to stay here in the long term in the United States beyond your graduate studies. To get a credit card, the major credit card issuers you might want to start looking at includes American Express, Discover, Visa, and MasterCard. I believe a lot of you are familiar with Visa and MasterCard because they are more global and they are associated with different banks around the world. So in essence, also here in the US, the Visa and MasterCard will often be given by a banking institution, but you can also get the Discover and American Express as an alternative without necessarily approaching a banking institution. In building your credit score, that would mostly depend on how you're able to manage whatever credit card you choose to get, how you spend money, how you pay back whatever money you spend, as well as how many credit cards you have. You're allowed to have as many credit cards you have as you can. I have friends who have 3, 4 credit cards. But again, keep in mind that when you have a credit card and there is a bulkload of money on it, maybe $3,000, remember that it is not your money, but it's like a loan that you have to pay back eventually. So also different credit card will offer sign-up bonuses and cashbacks on spending some amount on it. So you should also look out for that. I believe many of these credit card also have referrals. So if you get a credit card and you know a friend who wants to get one, can set them a link and you get instant money for that. In getting a credit card is simple as ABC, I guess. You just visit the website of the credit card issuer you want to obtain, and you fill in some basic information about yourself. You fill in your social security number, and you get the credit card. Easy as that. In case where you do not have a social security number, you can speak to your international student office to know how you can obtain what is known as the individual taxpayer identification number. You can always use this as an alternative to your social security number. So yeah, I think Ali would talk a little bit about obtaining driver's license.
Thank you, Benmoni, for this valuable information. Yeah, it's me again. So now I would be talking about driving license, and let's start by mentioning some of the benefits and liabilities that comes with driving in the US. So of course, if you have a driving license and you have a car, some of the benefits you'll get is convenience. You can easily commute, specifically when there is no reliable transportation, or if the public transportation is limited. The most important part about actually having a driving license in the US is identification. So as an international student, I used to carry my passport everywhere just in case if I needed that. But if you have a driving license, it serves as an ID, so you can just keep your passport at home. Some of the legal requirements and liabilities that comes with driving is insurance. I know some countries doesn't really have insurance as mandatory thing, but here in the US, it is mandatory. And the specifics of the insurance varies by state. So most likely you would have to search for what type of insurance you need to get and what are the insurance companies that works at your state. There are also some hidden costs. You have to maintain the car. If you aren't very, I would say, polite driver, you might get a lot of speed and parking tickets. And unfortunately, you might also get into accidents. So this might put some financial burden on you. In general, there are two different types of driving license in the US, and they differ by the purpose. So the first type is the driving permit. So you get this driving permit so you can actually drive, but there is a very important rule that you can't drive by your own. You need to have an adult with a driving license with you in the car. So this driving permit was meant to be used for training and practicing driving, not actually driving around. And of course, the other type is the full driving license, which once you get it, you can simply go anywhere you want without having anyone with you in the car. So yeah, so here I'm going to talk about driving license process. And again, this is a very general information. I would say that the first time I came here, I didn't know anything about that. So of course you need to do some search for yourself, but in general, the first thing to do, the first step you should take to apply for a driving license is to look for the nearest DMV, that stands for Department of Motor Vehicles. And it's very important to know that it's not like a walk-in, it's not like Walmart or a grocery store. Most of the time you will need to get an appointment. So just to save you some time, look for the DMV, call them, see if they allow you to go or you need to get an appointment prior. And sometimes this appointment takes a very long time. So I would suggest if you have this in mind, if you plan to drive, I think just do this the second day you arrive, because it might take around week or even 2 weeks to be able to go there. Yes, the main documents you need to apply for a driving license is a proof of identity and a legal presence here in the US. So your passport and your visa, in addition to the I-20 and I-90 form, should fulfill this requirements. The second thing is the proof of address. So unfortunately, if you are sitting in a sublease, most likely you won't be able to provide this because, again, sublease is not something, most of the time, you can actually make it official, but typically when you take a sublease, you don't really have a proof of address. You don't have any of the utility bills under your name. But in case if you have your own apartment, then you can provide any of the utility bills, your lease agreement, or even an official statement from your university or your bank to your address, to your home. And again, SSN, as usual, you will ask to provide your SSN, but for some exchange students who are actually being paid by their country or maybe another sponsor, you don't have the ability to issue an SSN for most scenarios. Sometimes some states just give SSN to anyone, but some students actually cannot get SSN. But this shouldn't be an issue because you can still apply for a driving license, but you will be asked to provide a letter of ineligibility, which you can easily get from the Social Security Administration. So in general, driving license aren't expensive. So on average, you will be asked to pay around $30 during the written test. Some states might be more, but I would say this is a very good, this is a very good value that acts as an average for the whole states. So what are the tests you should expect to do here in the US? Some countries, they don't really do written tests. They just give you the car and ask you to drive. But here, you will be asked to do two different types of tests. The first one is the written test, which is typically require an appointment. And in this test checks your understanding of rules, traffic signs, and safe driving practices. They want you to understand that when we have this 3 colors, you need to stop if it's red, and this like very easy things. But of course, it also has some other, I would say, difficult rules. They might ask you, what if you was caught driving under influence? What will be your fine? What will happen in that case? So yeah, it's very important to understand all these things before like getting into roads and start to drive. I recommend to take there are a lot of practice tests online, and specifically this one, I think we will be uploading this presentation when we put it on YouTube. So you can just press on this online word, and it will open a tab. You can simply select your state because unfortunately the rules differ by state. So there is nothing that works for all states. Yeah, so the second test is the actual driving test, or sometimes they call it the road test. So most likely you will need to get an appointment, and there's something I didn't mention here. It's your liability to provide or to come with a car. Some DMVs actually allow you to rent a car to do your test on, but in most cases you will be asked to have your own car to get the test with. And in this test, you will be asked to show you ability to perform the driving maneuvers. So they might ask you, or the tester might ask you to do like parallel parking, or to turn around and do the 3-point turns, which you will learn while practicing the written test online. And some of my recommendation is that before, just don't say, okay, I know how to drive. I don't really need to practice. I just got my written, so I would go ahead and do the road test. I don't think it works this way here because most likely the driving style here in the US is slightly different. So I would suggest to practice after you get your driving permit and before going to do your driving test. And again, just in case if you didn't hear the first section, this is my email. Just reach out if you have any questions or things that we didn't mention here in this part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali, for this valuable information. Hello, everyone. My name is Nazia Raza, and I'm pursuing PhD in Water Resources Engineering from Lehigh University, and my research interest lies in the application of machine learning and optimization in smart water distribution systems. Today, I'll be sharing all the information about the resources that are being offered by the universities to international students, and we have a bunch of them. So we have universities international office to support international scholars and students. Do we have some student associations and clubs to support international students? What kind of academic support services that are being offered with the international students? Do we have some career development services? If yes, what kind of supports do they provide? And how are the facilities provided by Health and Counseling Center? And what kind of international organizations do we have and why it is important to be a part of them? So I would like to begin with University's International Office. So every university has its own office for international students and scholar, and then they provide services including immigration information. They also provide some advices on filing or obtaining health insurances. They also support you in guiding how to file checks, which you need to file once every year. Also, as it has already been explained by Bunmi, that you need to have travel signatures if you are visiting outside states. So this is the office which provides you the travel signature. You just need to let them know that you're moving out of states and you will get it as soon as possible. And also they also offer some or host some career events and fun events for international students, and there is a way to be notified. You can check their email. You need to subscribe to their email. Also, if you want to talk to them, so you can make some in-person appointments, or you can also see if they're offering some live chats accessible through website or not. And of course, all these supports varies university-wide. The next we have is student association and clubs. Every university has hundreds of clubs and organizations, and these clubs and associations are maybe offered for just fun activities. There are some cultural groups. There are some clubs for women only. There are some international student focus groups. And there are some very specific groups for, let's say, fitness and sports. There are some religious focus clubs, and there are also some academic support clubs. So how you can get to know about all of them? So you just need to go and check with your university and see how many clubs do you have. And if you are interested in any of those, you can go and communicate with them. And I think website is the best resource to get in touch with the clubs and who is hosting or organizing these events. Also, if you feel that some of these clubs are not in your university, you can be the one who can start your own club. And to do that, you need to check with the university what kind of requirements do they have, and then you can continue with it. And the next one is academic support services. So most of the university also offers some language and writing centers that helps you to learn how to write academic papers, or like, let's say, research papers, and how to make attractive resumes. They also conduct calendar of events throughout the year for the writing retreats where you can go and write in a group and also get a review or a critical feedback on your own academic writing. That's very beneficial to be a part of such to take advantage of such support services. And also we have some tutoring services. So some university offers some tutoring services, and you can get the information on the website. But sometimes if there is none, you can also check with your department. Sometimes some graduate students offer tutoring services, and you just need to check the soft boards of your department. Whenever you're walking in the corridor, check if you find someone offering such service, so you can be in touch with them and get some support during your coursework. So all these services are available in person and also offline and also online, and you just need to check with who is providing these services. And the next one we have is career services. All universities have their own center for career and professional development. They are the people who are going to help you to look for internships. They also help you to get some job search assistance. And they also arrange career fairs every semester. And this is the opportunity for you to meet with the employers. You can get in touch with your own industry, and you can be interviewed to obtain internship opportunities or job opportunities if you're looking for. Also, if you want to have someone to have a look at your resume and give you critical feedback, they are the people you can go and communicate with. And they also conduct sometimes walk-in interviews and also have some mock interviews to prepare you to face those employers. And also, if you want to have some professional headshot done, you need to be in touch with them, whether they are hosting such events, so you can go and get the headshot for your new LinkedIn profile. And also, if you want to present or prepare your talk for thesis or conferences, they are the people you can go and present to them. They will be your good audience to provide you some valuable feedbacks. Also, I would like to share the two main online recruiting platforms. So the first one is Handshake and the other one is InterestRide. So the access to both of these platforms are being offered by your own university. Let's say for me, I'm a Lehigh student. I have access to Handshake, so I have my own profile. I have put my resume there. What is my research interest? What kind of job I would like to be interested in? And there are some of the industry that I have followed. So by doing that, I will be aware of all the opportunities that I wanted to be aware of. So I would really, really recommend that if you have access to any of these, go and make your own profile and be notified about what's going on around you in the industry. And the next one is health and counseling centers. So every university provides some healthcare and wellness facilities within campus, and it also provides you with in-person health checkups. If you want to get your blood work done, you don't need to go to a local hospital. You can make an appointment with them and get it done within campus. Also, they offer mental health and counseling services. So if you want to discuss something and if you're more comfortable in your own native language, so you can also check with them, do they provide multilingual counselors? Or if you want to rejuvenate your religious beliefs, there are sometimes some religious focused counselors as well. So you can better discuss with them. So to do that, you need to discuss like what sort of counselors they are being available within your university. With me, I have both available. So it's very good for you to take advantage of all of these facilities. Beyond that, they also provide some insurance advices. And if you want to get your COVID vaccination or other vaccinations done, you can check with them. Sometimes they provide over-the-counter medicines, and specifically, they also provide disability support services. This is for the students in the case when they are not able to commute to the department to take classes, or they cannot commute to write their own exam. So they are the people you should communicate with, and they will make your commute easier, so you'd be able to attend the department and take your classes and write exams as well. Also, to get your driving license, you need to have a vision test done, and you can get it done in your own university. So how you can make appointments? So for me, I need to make calls. You should check with the website of your own university whether they allow email or calls. For me, I need to make calls. Also, they have some online patient portals, so you can access all your blood work reports and bills which are being posted on your account. So it's a good track for you, and it's always been specifically for you, so nobody else has access to it. And lastly, we have some professional organizations. It's a very great resource that you should be aware of. So some of the professional organizations are being mentioned here. Let's say for mechanical engineers, we have ASME. For civil engineers, we have ASCE. We have some society for women engineers. And let's say for computational or computer science engineers, we have ACM. So why do we need to be affiliated with these organizations? The first thing is that they are being quite pretty much encouraged by the employers. Next, you get to know about the people in academia and industry and what they are working on. So you will build your own network. And lastly, it's very beneficial for you to be aware of what kind of scholarships they are offering. And you can also use them and also apply for them. So it's very encouraged to be a part of such organizations. If you don't have any student chapter, you can also think of obtaining one, and you could be the pioneer in your own department. So this is all we have about the good resources, and I would like to wish you the very best to start this new chapter of your life, and I would like to hand it over to Meghna. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nazia, and thank you all for really great parts of this presentation. So I guess where I'm going to take over is now, hopefully we've given you enough information about how you should prepare before you get to the US, and then how to set up your life once you're here. And now Nazia has shown you how to kind of build a community and get started with your life here. What I'm going to talk to you about is, so it's likely that you're coming here for a master's or a PhD, and you're going to be maybe doing research with an advisor. So we wanted to give you a little bit of advice on how to start establishing a relationship with your advisor. So what we've done is we're providing you a list of questions. I'll show you the link a few slides from now, of questions that you can ask your advisor in one of your early meetings, just so you are prepared for what's to come ahead and so that you have an idea of expectations for your degree. So a few topics that we're going to cover are questions about logistics and advising style, the research project you're going to be working on, and funding, expectations outside of research, and then career planning, so post-PhD plans. So let's start with, I'm just going to give you a few examples of these questions here, but the full list is available to you later. So in terms of logistics and advising style, it would be great to know what your advisor expects out of your meetings. How should you prepare for the meetings to make them productive? So should you put all of your results in a PowerPoint so that you can talk through, or should you just show plots or Excel files? What does your advisor expect is good to know. It's also good to know what their advising style is like. Are they more hands-on? Are they involved in all of your work, and will they keep on top of you, or are they more hands-off? So will you expect to not meet them very often, and do they expect you to take care of yourself? It's good to know this because it's good to know if you will be a good match. Maybe you need a hands-on advisor to keep you on track, and maybe you'd prefer a little more distance. So it's good to know in advance what they're like. Also, it's good to know what if they have a policy or expectations about vacation time or the number of hours you're expected to work every week. So some universities and some departments have fixed guidelines, like you can have 2 weeks of vacation once a year or something like that. But not all universities do. So sometimes it just depends on what your advisor is okay with. So it's good to ask them in advance what they expect and how many hours they expect you to work on research versus your TA versus coursework, because you're going to have a lot to juggle. So it's good to kind of know how to structure your week. Now about research projects and funding, it would be good to ask them what other research they're conducting, the research topics related to what you're going to be working on and separate from that. So this is good to know sort of where your advisor is located in the field, and also interesting to know for the future, if you want to branch out a little bit, what are topics that they are experts in. That it's just good to know what they do, basically. Also good to know if there are any major deliverables or deadlines that you should put in your calendar. Maybe your funding dictates that you should have a paper out at the end of this year. So if you know that, then you can plan in advance to try to make sure you have results that you can write a paper about in that much time. Or maybe you want to have a certain set of results for a conference abstract. So this allows you to sort of plan ahead. And finally, it's good to know if you're expected to attend or present at conferences. If so, which ones? Are they domestic or international? How frequently will you be allowed to go to conferences? And will the travel be funded is a big question, because conferences are expensive. There's registration, there's accommodation, traveling back and forth, and then food costs and things like that. So will your advisor fund you completely, or will you have to rely on external travel grants? It's good to know in advance, as opposed to when you're further into your PhD, maybe you've realized you haven't gone to any conferences. It's just good to know what you're getting yourself into. Now about expectations outside of research, maybe you already know that you're going to be a teaching assistant, but maybe you have research funding for a few years, then you might have to TA after that. It's just good to know what to expect on that front. And then maybe your advisor has opinions or restrictions about extracurricular activities. As a graduate student, you're going to be busy. If you're involved in research, you have to somehow cram a lot of research into a week, as well as coursework, as well as TA responsibilities, as well as maybe mentoring responsibilities. So maybe your advisor discourages jamming more extracurricular activities in there, or maybe they encourage it. Maybe they think you should be a part of a technical committee, or you should be a volunteer. So it's good to kind of ask what they expect in that regard. And also, different advisors have different opinions about internships over the summer. Some advisors recommend it, and some advisors prefer that you focus only on your research throughout your master's or PhD. So it's good to know in advance what they would like. And then finally, in terms of after the PhD planning, So first of all, it's good to know if there are expectations either from your advisor or your department. So typically, these are soft expectations about how many papers you should be submitting or publishing in order to graduate. For example, in my department, the informal requirement is that you should be in the process of completing your third journal paper when they allow you to graduate. But it's different for different departments. So it's good to know what the expectation is for you. And then it's good to know how long it takes for students to graduate. That's different for different advisors, maybe 3 years, 4 years. It's just, you never know in advance how long it'll take you, but it's good to have an idea of how long it might take. And then finally, it's great to know where previous students or alumni from this lab group have gone on to work after graduation. This kind of gives you an idea of where your skills might be applied, what kind of industries you could go on to join. And it gives you an idea of the network that already exists to you. For previous alumni, kind of by default, they will answer your questions. They're probably going to be willing to help you secure an interview, or at least probably willing to talk you through what they do. So it's just good to know where you might end up. So this was just kind of a sample of all the questions, but for a full list of all of these questions, we point you to this link, tinyurl.com/advisorquests. So this has a bunch of questions that we recommend asking your advisor in your early meetings, and also suggestions for how to make your meetings successful so that you and your advisor are both happy. And I want to very gratefully acknowledge the Civil Architectural and Environmental Engineering Grad Students Advisory Board at UT Austin for coming up with this list of questions in the first place and for being willing to share this resource with all of us. And finally, thank you for joining us for this webinar. If you're interested in, so we're thinking of organizing a follow-up webinar. All of the stuff we've discussed today is for new incoming students, but once you're here in the US, your concerns become a little bit different. So we thought of having part 2 of this international students webinar. If you're interested in attending that, we encourage you to sign up here using this link, tinyurl.com/WDSA web sign up. And in order to keep in touch with us, to learn about future events, job postings, etc., we recommend following us on LinkedIn. Also check us out on Instagram and check out our past webinar recordings on YouTube. So with that, I'd like to conclude, and we're open for questions or comments, discussion, anything at all, including from our participants. And if not, feel free to put stuff in the chat, but I just wanted to quickly say something to add on to what Ali mentioned earlier about the driving license. I think a driving license is a really good form of ID to have when you're in the US. It's a bit risky to be carrying your passport everywhere to prove your ID. So I think I recommend getting a driver's license or getting a state ID, which most states offer like a little photo ID. I definitely recommend getting one of those early. And it's not a terribly hard process. I think also if your country recognizes a US driver's license, that means the US probably recognizes your country's driver's license here. So if you're a new international student, you might actually be able to drive here for a year without having to get a US driver's license. So just check that before you apply. That's it for me. So for now, I'm going to stop this recording. Thank you all.